Yeah? Oh my gosh. Can I help you? No?
It's just me and my...
Okay, in your hands.
Cioè non è che tu stai guardando.
lì non me lo manda. Ok.
Perché sei in presentazione. Devi chiudere la presentazione.
Yeah, the other part of it.
The other part of the communication.
Potrei farlo anch'io, però non è necessario che si veda il video.
No,
Però me lo puoi fare.
Pronti,
se succede, io ho avuto francamente, ci ho pensato, mi sono chiusa con me stessa e ho detto, mi spiace, ma comunque io il volo l'ho preso da da prima ho preso proprio lo stesso albergo della conferenza.
Direi di partire subito, visto che poi un po' tempo.
Sì, devo vedere se gli altri sono già riusciti a uscire dalle prove, quindi perché vorrei chiuderli fuori.
Certo, a letto presto, non lavorare troppo. Non sai fare questi pantaloni. Bellissimi. Infatti si vede che sono caldi, sai? Cioè che è tessuto da sci. No, però sono bellissimi. Non me lo posti sulle notizie, l'ho visto. No, ma questo di adesso io ho fatto lanciare 2 volte il posto a Valerio.
Non ho visto niente.
Non ne abbiamo nessuno.
Lo stavo condividendo quando ho raggiunto l'apice.
Quindi faccio, sono già viste, le faccio a tutti.
Senti, però vedo che continuo a non taggare le persone.
No, non vedi quello che cos'è Facebook? Soprammesso per ora, ma vogliamo su Instagram, che poi tu non ce l'avevi.
Federica, la connessione è più veloce, quindi ancora più veloce.
Senti, l'ho detto a lei, che potevamo fare un'intervista incontro nella Mix.
Yes, adesso dopo mangiare.
Sì, verso le 5 6. No?
D'accordo.
Sì, in quell'orario facciamo tutte le interviste, queste cose.
Se te la deve vedere le 2 lezioni?
If you want, follow me. And take a seat inside. See, there is seats for everyone.
Allora io
There's
intanto
not.
le vediamo qui.
I will take some chairs.
Se per vado assolutamente. Quella prima
Elmer, provócame, provócame.
Who wants a chair? Do everyone has a chair? Okay, this is a chair. So before talking about virtual reality, let's stick to reality. So the need to see is a very real need. So if everyone is standing, all right. Perfect. Okay. I'll wait for everyone to be comfortable. Perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone, and my name is Andre Carraro. I'm here because of a European project that aims to work between virtual reality and theater. In the midst of virtual reality and theater, we see that these two worlds can overlap. Maybe they already overlapped in the past, not only in the near past, but also in the remote past. And we'll see the characteristic of this kind of relationship, that it can be opposite, but it also can be very, very complementary. Giulio, poi grazie. Giulio is gonna help me because I'm a little bit out of reach. We choose this room because this is, as you already know, this is going to be the room that we will use in our performance tomorrow. So it's an interesting choice. It is not a very frontal approach. I had to be frontal because I needed to show you some of these images and informations, but I wanted to show also this kind of space because this 360 approach in the space is what I am telling and talking about today. So, as I said, I'm going to talk about immersive technologies and performing arts, and the possibility for the spectator and the actor to overlap, to work together, to change perspective, and somehow to play with these two roles. Giulia, grazie. So what we did in Spore was to deepen our understanding of the DNA of artistic content between original performance and digital tools. Also to choose available digital technologies. Not all the digital technologies are available. Not all of the promises about virtuality are rooted in reality. Most of them are just smoke in the air, as Italians say. So you need somehow to be reliable when you choose a technology and try to minimize the problems. To study the expected types of relations on artists and on the audience, which is the most important thing, of course, and it's going to change if you decide to use virtual reality in theater. And of course, to study the audience user experience. So one thing that is very important to understand is that when you use new technologies, somehow the audience is also the user, okay? Because the audience uses a technology. So the approach is different because it's also very practical somehow. So, very often we think about new technologies as abstract. Instead, we should approach them as material culture, because that's what they are. You touch them, you wear them, you see them. As right now, you can also live in them. So that's very important, to start from the human material and the material culture in general. Also discuss the practical implication, technical requirements and logistics. That is very important. When you start to use these technologies, you are starting to use some complex worlds, so you need to plan it very carefully because before you go forward. Giulia, grazie. Let's start from this weird thing that is the metaverse. It looks like something very new. Actually, it was something that took place at least a decade before we started to talk about it. The metaverse is in the mouth of almost everyone, okay? From big stakeholders to people that are just happy and excited about it, but a lot of people just misread the characteristic of the metaverse. They put it everywhere and they kind of just can't describe what it is. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start to understand what the metaverse is. So in our opinion, first of all, the metaverse is a virtual, three-dimensional space, environment. So we are talking about an environmental thing. Metaverse must be lived, must be something that has a three-dimensional space and reality. Also, it must be simultaneous. And there is the presence that is a very important element that we will see at the end of the presentation, but it's crucial. The very difference, in my opinion, between what was the internet before and what will be the internet from now on is going to be presence, okay? And presence is very important because in theater, of course, presence is the key. Grazie. So the definitions of the metaverse, we will go very, very, very fast here. A real-time 3D social media. It's a virtual world. So that's pretty funny because what is a real-time 3D social media? That's reality. I mean, a bar is a 3D real-time social media, of course. So what Sweeney was trying to say, without knowing it, is just reality, okay? Or a simulation of it. Zuckerberg talked about a set of virtual spaces. So it's not just a virtual world, it's many virtual spaces, many different virtual spaces. That is very important. He actually went full on the opposite direction, trying to monopolize it. So, but you know, in Italian we say, the dress doesn't make the monk. Also, someone described it as a real life, real as life. So that's interesting. How can you achieve something that is as real as life? Looks like the theater somehow. We'll talk about it later. Resolution and quality of today's technology. So one thing that is interesting is that for someone, metaverse must be real, photorealistic. I do not believe this is the key to understand the metaverse, but a lot of people think that it is necessary for the metaverse to be photorealistic. Grazie. An anthropological revolution. What did I just do? Do I have a tick? Did I wink? How can you understand it? You can describe something very carefully. You can be very precise in the description of a phenomenon, but how can you describe the meaning of it? There is an anthropologist is very famous. He used this thing, the wink, to describe something that he called the thick description. So there is the description that can be very precise, it can be very analytic, it can be very, very, very careful on the terms. But also there is the thick description that in anthropology is the description of the meaning behind something, not the description of something. And an anthropological revolution because the metaverse is going to take place in the human world for the humans. That is all. It's the creation of spaces, virtual spaces, that will resemble how people perceive the world, not the world itself. So it's all about perception, it's all about the use of it. So it's a very anthropological revolution because it's going to take place in the human domain and not in the domain of plants or animals or whatever. In fact, what the metaverse right now aims to do is to give superpowers to people that use it. You can teleport yourself, you can travel through time, you can see through walls and objects, you can fly, you can change size, you can have a super view if you want and zoom in, zoom out. You can have a sensory superpower. Of course, everything is about perception, is not real, but this is what people aim, Americans aim to do, mostly. So, this is also very anthropological, it tells a lot. What I'm going to talk about, though, today, is the history of virtual spaces, because some people, most of the people think that virtual spaces are a thing of contemporary era. They are not. There are important differences between the virtual worlds that we see today. Mostly are perceptual differences, not conceptual differences, but virtual space were created over history many times. We have, for example, Dante's Inferno, Paradiso, and Purgatorio. In the Divine Comedy, Dante creates a virtual space that is divided in chants, is divided in loci, it's a Latin word, it's divided in places. So if you read the Divine Comedy, you're not reading a romance, okay? Although somehow, when he speaks about Beatrice, there's some love in between, but you're really reading a map, conceptual map of a virtual world, because you're inside the world. You travel into the world while you're reading it, and you are imagining that world. So this is a virtual reality device, the Divine Comedy. At the very end of the presentation, we'll understand what are the differences, in my opinion, between the Divine Comedy and the Metaverse as we know it right now. Grazie. So, Metaverse as an exhibitions and works of art. So this is what it's really interesting for us. There are many metaverses. Right now, there are a lot of metaverses that are used for commercial use, mostly for the commerce of works of art, which is very prolific, as you well know. So what is interesting is that one of the first use of the metaverse, a use that is very grounded and important economically and socially speaking, pivots around art. This is very interesting. Probably because it's aesthetical importance. Art is, of course, about the aesthetics and the visual impact. But this is interesting. So the first use of the metaverse that has an economical impact has to do with art. So there must be somehow a connection between the two worlds, at least some compatibility. That's it. What is an immersive technology? Let's get to the material culture, otherwise I'm going to speak about Dante and no one is going to understand really what I'm talking about. So in 2014 there were the Google Glass. If you don't know what they were actually a mess. But the people were very brave to try to do that, and they were about augmented reality. So I'll do a little a brief explanation. Most people don't really know the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. It's very easy actually. Augmented reality augments the reality. So you see the reality around you, and then you have some digital objects that augment the reality you're living in. It's very different because in virtual reality, the virtual world completely erased the real world. So this is the big difference. Google Glass were augmented reality devices. Then YouTube, in 2015, a year later, introduced the Google Cardboard and Open 360 channels, which is very important. YouTube right now has a huge amount of 360 material that you can use for free. It's quite important. In the same year, and it's not a coincidence, Samsung launches the Gear 360 camera. It's the first commercial use camera that sets the basis for every camera after it. Two cameras, 180 degrees each, that together makes a 360 camera that allow people to take a photo very easily of spaces and then to create virtual reality spaces in real life. Which means that a lot of virtual reality spaces in the beginning were just photo of real ones. That is quite interesting, conceptually speaking. Then you have Mark Zuckerberg that invested $2 billion in the Oculus, which is, I mean, he could do that, but yeah, it's very important that people can do that, otherwise we couldn't use them, but still, it was path failure. But as he proceeds in his life and in his crusade to monopolize virtual reality, if he is willing to lose so much billion of dollars, it means that something is really at stake. Sony creates the PlayStation VR. Gaming is one of the most important instances of virtual reality, of course. A lot of people use it for gaming. And then Mark Zuckerberg in 2021 decides that it's the moment to try and bet it all. And his ongoing crusade of Meta is doggedly going forward somehow. And let's see what are the types of immersive technologies. So you have the VR viewers, virtual reality devices that you wear and they instantly put you in a virtual world. You can see a virtual world with this kind of devices at the half of the presentation in that white cube over there. Then you have the 3D theater installation, so you have extensive projectors and screens that somehow create in real life a perception of a virtual reality world. Then you have augmented reality glasses, like the Google glasses we saw before, that makes you see, like with normal glasses, the reality, but dot the reality of strange objects and digital things. Also, you have video mapping. That is one of the most important devices that we are using tomorrow here. And then you have devices with 3D gyroscopes. What is important here to understand is that every object that we have that allows us to go on the internet in a smart way usually have a gyroscopio, that is a device that somehow understands the position of the device in the world. So a lot of people didn't understand the importance of this thing. We were presented by Steve Jobs for one of our applications because he made the iPad with the gyroscope without knowing that you could have used it for virtual reality, and we did use it, and he was quite amazed about it. And you just used the geolocalization of the device in order to create the illusion that you are glimpsing in a virtual world through this device. So let's talk about what is really virtual reality in our opinion in Carraro Lab. I am here to represent a business, Italian business, a family business that was created from people that painted. we used to paint, and then in the 80s we started to use new technologies, but we did it with our approach that was from fine arts. We have a precise theoretical approach on virtual reality, and we believe virtual reality is an incredibly long story that roots inside the history of art itself. So what is interesting to understand? Let's start from the Middle Ages. Let's not go too far back. And you have the painting. And the painting, how can you see a paint? Usually the painting, not always, but usually 99% of the time is framed inside a quadrangular frame. Quite interesting, okay? Then you have photography. I mean, photography, people lost their minds when photography came out. Baudelaire wrote a terrible poem against photography, because photography meant the end of painting, which it didn't actually. It freed painting from its photographical approach. What photography did? I mean, not always, but what photography did in the beginning, frame, quadrangular frame. Then you have the cinema, quadrangular frame. What are you looking at right now is a projection in quadrangular frame. The door is quadrangular frame, the table is quadrangular frame. Then you have TV that is quadrangular frame. Then you have the personal computer that we are using there. It's always quadrangular frame. That camera has a rounded objective, but it's going to take a video of myself talking in quadrangular frame. So it's always about quadrangular frame. And we cannot see it because we live in it. And we've been living in it for 1,000 years, roughly. It's a long period of time. You kind of get used to it, but it's not the only frame you have to see things in an artistic way. You have the smartphone, which is fairly new. It's fairly new, and it's quadrangular frame. We cannot see it because it's just in our lives, but of course, art is not only quadrangular frame, we're just used to it so we cannot see it, which is precisely one of the most important things in anthropology. When people are used to something, they cannot see it. An anthropologist is someone that enters inside the world from another world so he can see things that people are used to. That's the most important thing about anthropology. And then you have this, which is quadrangular frame, actually, framed, but it's not about quadrangular frame. So what is most important about this is that everything that goes around the theory of art goes around the quadrangular frame. Composition. When you are a film director, you work only with quadrangular frame and you just move them and cut them and see and you do. Everything you do is about the quadrangular frame. Here it's not. You cannot frame things here in order to narrate. You cannot do that anymore. You have to work with the space. We have a term in Carraro Lab that is space telling. Now it's the era of space telling, and before it was the era of storytelling. You cannot tell a story anymore, you have to work with simultaneity, which is very important. It changes everything. What is interesting, and I waited a little bit, is that virtual reality is a term that was born in theater. The first person that used the term virtual reality was Artaud in the theater in its double. And it used it to say that theater, in his opinion, was kind of, not really, but kind of a simulation of a real life, a virtual reality. So what is interesting is that this term, this concept, was born in theater itself. That is quite, that tells us something. Why? We'll see it after a while. So for example, the most important thing about theater, in my opinion, I am not a person that works in theater for all his life, but in my opinion, theater is very important because theater happens in a situation where people are together in a situation. So you're not just sitting in a cinema or sitting in the sofa of your house and you're watching something that already happened. You're watching something that is happening. So it's not isolation. I worked with Yuval Avital during the COVID pandemic as an anthropologist. I studied him and what he was doing. And he was able to create an enormous opera that took 200 people, voice and performative artists from all over the world, that created huge work of art that pivot around the isolation, and with virtual reality was able to put these people together, and these people were able to sing together in a situation where isolation was no more. So you weren't with people, but you felt as if you were with people. That is quite interesting. So this is important because it tells us that virtual reality can be something that creates community and not only isolation. Virtual reality is an arena. So it's funny because you see a lot of Americans here, because Americans, of course, they are the muscles of innovation usually, but exactly because they are the muscles, you usually see action and nothing else. So I'm talking about the void. I could show you a video, but it's not necessary. We can try, maybe. Maybe we can try. But anyway, the void used to be. Here we go. Puoi mettere lo schermo intero, per favore? Grazie. The void used to be a place where used to be because they had to close. It wasn't commercially wise. So you would enter inside real space like this, where you could walk, go around with a visor of virtual reality, and you would touch things, as you see, seeing something that was completely different from reality. But the thing is that was very convincing because it was synesthetic. You could touch things, and while you touch them, even if they are polyester, you would see marble and you would feel like as if it was marble, or as if someone was attacking you. Of course, it's all about action and killing someone else, because I mean, America is very militarized, as we know. But you see, this thing is quite interesting, because you just turn an artificial place in a very convincing atmospheric reality. This was very expensive because they also used some smell devices, some water and everything else, so it was quite expensive. But surely it was very fun. I don't remember how much a ticket costed, but it was quite expensive. So grazie. And also, as you can see, there were some actions that you could do. You could take things and that had some weight to them. Prova ad andare, esatto. Se no vai pure su, perfetto. Grazie. But also theater already experienced a lot of virtual reality in its near past. I'm talking about Sleep No More of Punch Drunk Theater Company. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Valerio used to know it when I talked about it in Brescia. I was quite excited. So, why did I tell you about this? Because this didn't involve any kind of technological hardware. Nothing. You would go on the top of an abandoned skyscraper in New York, paying your ticket, of course. And then you would go down the stairs into some of the rooms of this place that were full of scenography and actors that were doing their parts inside these rooms. It wasn't a stage. You would go around these rooms as if you were part of a film, but not as a spectator anymore, something else, something different. There is Fabio Viola, that is an expert on video game in Italy, that used the term, instead of spettatore, spettatore. So instead of spectator, spect-actor. So you kind of have something that goes in between. You're not a professional actor, but you have to act somehow. And you have to be convinced that you're inside a virtual world. This is virtual. It's not real. These people are not real. These are characters. It's not a reality. It's a virtual reality. So this thing achieved virtual reality situation that was an immersive work of art without any kind of new technology. So this is quite interesting. You don't need this kind of technology. This kind of technology, of course, opens up a lot of possibility. So there are a lot of ambitions of Oculus Quest that align with Zuckerberg's ambitions, of course, that are to monopolize somehow all kind of media assets. So this is quite interesting. It's very important. Probably here I got the sympathy of Valerio in Brescia, because probably he was afraid I was kind of like a technology lover that somehow couldn't understand the menace that virtual reality poses to theater, because it is menacing. It is an important menace to theater, because a lot of approaches to virtual reality, thinking of recreating theater, do not recreate theater, they just erase it. I'll tell you why. I mean, the Under the Present was a project that was born in 2016. It was a video game, okay? That was described as theatrical play. But people would just enter with their avatar, okay, with their character, virtual character, and they would see other virtual characters doing things, okay, that were actually actors that were playing this kind of characters. And they didn't have facial recognition, so they couldn't have expressions, they couldn't move really nicely, but they were actors. So you would speak with actors in a virtual world, going around in this boat, trying to solve a mystery. But this is actually a video game, that's all. There are thousands of video games that are like this. And the thing that an actor was behind these characters kind of faded away, because it looked like a video game and it worked like the video game. So, I mean, theater must be really an ugly copy of a video game in order to work. And this is a very nice video game. It's an awesome video game. It's called Kingdom Come Deliverance. And it's a photorealistic video game with an incredible amount of research and historical accuracy, depicting Bohemia in the 15th century. And it's quite interesting because many actors were involved in this project, many actors. And photorealism is really incredible here. You have characters that looked like the real characters, and you speak with them and they have very precise expressions. So actors here had to do a huge work acting and making technology mimic their expressions. It's quite interesting, but it's a video game. It's a video game. So here you have a video game that works with actors, but calling it theater would be too much, in my opinion. And a lot of people right now are speaking about this as a future of theater. In my opinion, it doesn't have anything to do with theater. And also there are some experiments like Half Real, where you could choose with the remote which character to activate in every scene. Which can be interesting, but it was actually very limited, because when I saw it I thought, it looks like a game. Then I did some research, and they actually admit that they copied a video game to do this. But the thing is that in the video game, that is called Heavy Rain, I don't know if you know it, it's quite an incredible video game that allows you to interpret a person and choose everything that he can do. You can go to the bathroom, because before going to work or not going to the bathroom is going to change everything. You have something like 100 outcomes, possible outcomes. It's quite interesting. But in the play you had like 3 possible outcomes. Here you have 100, 150, and also you have 7 hours of gameplay where you can choose wherever you can go, whatever you can do, and it's quite immersive. So, in my opinion, the way is not to mimic video games or to work inside the video games, but to reflect on what theater is really is, and where we can put virtual reality devices. Grazie. Then you have all kind of limbo. That is a performance of a singer and actress that just is placed inside the virtual world, and she performs. Interesting, but what's going on here? You just see her in a tablet, and she just moves inside the virtual world singing, and it's like watching MTV. The outcome of it, it's not as interesting. It's not live. It's not alive. It's just, it happened, and you're just watching it in a quadrangular shaped device. So the thing is, it doesn't work. There's also, there was an experiment in the National Theatre of London, that is one of the theatres that experiment the most with virtual reality and augmented reality. And I mean, in this play, you had the stage, okay, and then they projected things as a scenography, okay, thinking that this would augment or make immersive this kind of work. But I will tell you something that is very important. You don't need to project something to make it immersive. What you're looking at right now is a scenography of Ezio Frigerio, a very important scenographer in Italy, with whom I had the honor to work. And here, Ezio, which used to be a very interesting person, works with illusion and perspective with real materials, and the effect is as immersive as the scenography that we saw. I mean, you do not need to project something in order for it to be incredibly convincing, in order for it to show you that something that is not as long, it can be double as long as you see it, because the illusion of the eye is an art that you can achieve through your intellectual work. As you can see here, Ezio Frigerio used he was obsessed with columns. He used these 4 layers of columns. And the strength of the light, of real life light, that showered on these real sails that just fell, and you would be completely sure that what you were seeing was a port. It was such a strong scenography that was present in the people that were watching it. So the problem here with Ezio Frigerio, I mean, he worked with this kind of theater, and it was quite precise. It was its job. But the problem with people that think that this kind of theater can be immersive is that they do not meditate on the physical appearance of the theater. They work in the theater all'italiana. Teatro all'italiana, that as you probably all know, was born in the around 18th century in Italy. It was product of extensive research of Italian humanists that in the 15th century, 16th century, 17th century were obsessed with ancient Rome. How often do you think about Rome anyway? Twice. There is a meme in Italy, but I think it already was mainstreamed here. Probably it wasn't. Anyway, because it looks like Americans and Italians think about Rome like 4, 5, 6 times a week, which, by the way, I do. I don't know why, but I just do. So there is this obsession with the ancient Rome in Italy, of course, and this brought people to the Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance. And in the Italian Renaissance, one of the late achievements was an extensive meditation on theater. I don't know if you know Ludovico Ariosto, but Ludovico Ariosto really meditated about the form of theater in the Este Signoria, north of Italy, in Modena, Mantova, in Ferrara. He just worked with the signori of these places in order to create a place that could host people and allow them to see live performances. So this was the beginning of the classical theater. Teatro all'italiana used to, somehow a lot of people that do not work in theater, they just think theater is this, okay? This is theater. The other things are something that I cannot really define. And that is quite interesting because, I mean, this kind of ethnical theater, because it's really an ethnical theater, because it is, became the most important structure. But how does it work? As you can see, it had here an amount of space where people would sit, and all of the other spaces here and here, they would have different social status and importance. Of course, there was an alignment with the social structure of Italy at the time. But here, what people would look at, even if they were here or there or over there, it's a quadrangular. The problem is here. The issue, the thing that really structures the media experience here is that it's always about the quadrangular. It doesn't change anything. You're watching at a living picture, at a living painting. Nothing changes. By the way, if you go there and then you go on the left, you see a little print of the Teatro Olimpico. That is the Teatro Olimpico I'm showing you to you right now. Teatro Olimpico was created by Palladio, that was a very important architect in Italy, and it kind of created the stereotypical neoclassical architecture that you see everywhere, from the British Museum to Washington. So this kind of, it was the birth of the stereotypical classical agenda. But what is interesting here is that we are back to the beginning. We are back to here, living a live experience, but through the quadrangular. So here I'm stopping because it's half of the presentation, because it's, I believe we are around, no, we have 15 minutes actually. Do you want to go a little bit more? I mean, if we want, we can stop. I can show you something with the VR glasses. But if you're curious, we can go a little bit further. So even if you have to go away, okay. Kaya seems to be pretty... So what is interesting actually is that I lied to you. Because, I mean, the quadrangular shape is something we got used to in the Middle Ages, where the picture and the book was invented. And the book is quadrangular, of course, but it must be triangular. But actually, art arguably was born in a 360 environment. So this is very important to understand. Virtuality is not something that is new. It's actually, I believe, the very birth of art. Art was rooted in the atmospherical context in which it was born. It was very site-specific. Always have been site-specific until recent time. So here, what are you watching is a complex, immersive virtual space. It's not a grotto, it's not a cave. You walk inside this place in a certain context, and you have to watch around. You are not, people do not tell you that you have to sit and watch straight forward for an hour or two and pay attention to what is going on, what is not going on. You have kind of the freedom to move, to glance to what you are looking, to just, you know, be curious, be creative, choose what you have to see or not to see, what you have to watch or not to watch. It's quite interesting, it's very important, it's very different from the other approaches. Here you have the Villa Livia, which is one of the most important example of secondo stile pittorico. It was a style of wall painting in ancient Rome. And it was the most, how can I say it, the most photorealistic. It tended to recreate an atmosphere, an atmospherical place. And I strongly advise you to go to the Roman Historian Museum next to the station in Termini in Rome, because it's, I believe, the most amazing little museum of Rome. And you can enter inside this place. And of course, I mean, people, when they just took these frescoes and put them on the wall, they just put the seat in the middle of the room, because not here, they didn't create lines of chairs. They put them in the middle, because of course you have to be able to watch around, see around what's going on. It's very important. Also churches. I was talking with Kai before, and he was describing me before the Protestant came to Denmark. The churches used to be painted with vibrant colors, but this was everywhere, because churches were virtual reality immersive places. They recreated a virtual reality, which is not reality. This is not reality. This doesn't happen in reality. I'm not saying that if you have faith in this, you shouldn't, but I didn't see a person flying. This is not reality, so it must be virtual reality. And all of the colors are not real, so this is in itself a virtual reality place. Also here you have a virtual reality space. It's one of the most important work of art in Italy, and it's a virtual reality immersive space. You enter here, I was talking with Kai before, there was a term in Latin to talk about this kind of narrative, Biblia pauperum, which means the Bible of the poor, the Bible of the person that cannot read, the person that cannot read words, but can read images. He can learn history from images. He can see Adam and Eve, he can see their sorrow, and this virtual reality, it's interesting because it works with the frame. Here, look at it, it's a frame, okay? But it's not a frame that you have to watch frontally, sitting there and you must ignore things around, you just watch to it. It's a frame that works in the midst of a virtual environment. So you use the frame to create meaning, and this is most important because when you talk about icons, you're talking about this. I mean, icons used to be objects of sacred art that had to convey meaning, to talk about something, and you would understand the symbol and the meaning of this symbol immediately. It is not a coincidence that icons in the digital world has the same or a similar importance and role. They convey meaning. It's not a history. It's not a myth. It's not an object charged with power, but they convey an action. If you see this image, you know that you can click on it. It's very important. Nothing is written over here, but the icon works beyond the words and the text. So we stop here because I was going to talk about also your history, because you are one of the theaters, if not the theater that 60 years ago kind of changed the perspective about Italian theater. Teatro Italiana was completely destroyed by the approach of this theater that works with spaces that do not have a frontal approach. We are here in the White Room, that it was conveyed to be an immersive space, okay? People had to be placed not in a frontal way. They could be placed in a frontal way, but they could be also placed into rows around, and that is right now something that we all know we can do in theater, but did we know it before? Okay? So I leave you in peace, as Italian priests do say when they finish the Mass, because I know you have to go away. You have to leave me and abandon me, okay? I'm not taking it personally. But if you want, you can stop a little while and I'll show you. I can make you wear a virtual reality glasses, goggles, to see